Good evening, good evening. It's Wednesday, so you know what that means. Hey there, good evening. How's everybody doing? It's Wednesday, so you know what that means. It's time to wake up. As people are jumping on, you might have seen and noticed in the title, we're talking about back to school today. So if you have kiddos in school or even, more grown-up kiddos. Hi, Mo. Hi, Tino. Tino, I was thinking about you earlier. Hey, Larry. So if you have kiddos, even like grown ones that are going back to college or something, I've tried to keep up with as many people as possible, finding out what everybody's going back to school is looking like. But if I haven't talked to you, feel free to type into the comments how your kids are going back to school or what that looks like. I know Jordan goes, my daughter, my baby, which I'm being nice right now because she's on my last good nerve, but she goes on Friday for, I don't want to call it her orientation because she's a senior. But she's going on Friday to go into the school, pick up her laptop, meet her teachers. I guess they got some kind of new, hey Tino, I guess they got some kind of new technologies that they're going to be using for the online learning portion this year. So they're doing online learning until at least September 15th. So she'll start that on Monday, but she's going to, my baby's a senior. That's kind of crazy. So I was like, well, I work from home that day, so I'm gonna get up and do the whole first day of school picture and everything like I always do. Oh, 3 days now, okay, Larry, wow. Oh, and they already got shut down. Oh my gosh, that's crazy, Larry. It's nuts. I mean, it's very interesting. So when you think back to when you guys were seniors, I don't know if you remember that time frame. You might not. I was like blown away because Jordan only needs 4 classes left to graduate, and a couple of those are electives of all things, and so she doesn't need any more math, doesn't need any more English, and this is what her schedule looks like, and she's good with this. So she has AP Statistics. Who does that their senior year when you don't have to take math? She has Physics. Who does that their senior year? Hi, Court. Their senior year when they don't need any more science. She's got Economics. I can see that. She's got Personal Finance. I'm going to talk more about that because I'm super excited about that. She's got her literature class, and then she does have a few fluffy classes. So she has Culinary Arts, and she'll have her weights and athletic training, which she does every year for basketball all year round. So hi, Shirley. So just, I was like, what is wrong with my kid? Like most seniors are like, I need to glide through and take all the easy classes and fluff classes, and not mine. She's like, give me a full course load. And I'm like, you're crazy. So anyways, tonight we're going to be talking about going back to school. So as we always start, I just kind of want you to close your eyes. And I want you to envision your kids' school years. Now, that might be your kids. It might be your grandkids. It might be nieces or nephews. If you don't have any kids, you don't have any nieces, nephews, grandkids, or anything else, maybe just think back to what it would look like when you were in school. But I want you to just think about your kids' school year. And I actually want you to envision the best. So I want you to think about, all of them are going to be doing some online schooling to some extent. So I want you to think about what that looks like and how they can be their best at that. And think about maybe if your goal, like my goal is for them to get back in person pretty quickly, think about that. What does that look like? If your kid is an athlete, think about what their season's going to look like, and just envision the best for them right now. Thank you, Shirley. I'm so proud of her too. But like I said, she's on my last good nerve. It was a good thing she wasn't home when I got home, because just think about that best year for them. I know for me, I'm hoping, again, we have no control over what this thing is doing, but I would really hope for her to have a senior year where, You know, she has her basketball season. All the seasons have been cut short by at least a month, but I'm hoping she gets to have a basketball season and an injury-free basketball season. I'm hoping and praying that she gets to have her prom, because she didn't get to do prom last year. And so this will be her only last opportunity for prom. I'm hoping to, you know, that when she takes her SAT at the end of this month, that she knocks that out of the ballpark. She's been studying like crazy, because in her own mind, she's stupid now that she hasn't been going to school for a few months. I don't know how that happens, but so yeah, just envision that best year. And when you've got that best year for them, like in your mind, go ahead and open your eyes. I think sometimes we just need to focus on what we want to happen instead of, I hate to call it reality, but to some extent reality, we get so sucked into reality that we're not thinking of the best. And I think we need to do that sometimes. But today's message with, you know, going back to school is really about, don't let school be your kid's only teacher. There was a study done about 5 years ago that said that the average American family, spends less than 15 minutes in meaningful conversation, a week. Less than 15 minutes in a week. The statistic actually says less than 3.5 minutes, which I just can't wrap my brain around that. That's crazy to me. Meaningful conversation, meaning is not you telling your kid what to do, get up, go do your chores, go do this. It's actually having conversation with your kiddos, teaching them things, telling them things that you learned throughout your life, getting to know them because they're different than you are, and really investing in getting to know them, because when you get to understand your children, you get to learn what works for them and how to be the best parent you can. I remember it was in junior high or middle school somewhere, and we were coming home from a basketball game, and I remember my daughter was in one of her moods. She tends to do this, especially in middle school. She was in one of her moods after the basketball game, and I was trying to give her a pep talk / like, okay, so what could you have done better, and those types of things. And she shot me like the look of death. If you have a teenage daughter, if you've ever had a teenage daughter, you know what that look looks like. And she shot me this look, and she said, you know what? What I really need is after a game, when you can tell this is how I'm feeling about how I played, give me my space. We can talk about it later. And I was proud of her, honestly, for being able to understand herself well enough and give me that feedback. So that's something that she taught me about how I can parent her, right? And how I can work on then helping her to teach and learn from different things. So, you know, when we look at the school system, and I have so many friends who are teachers and work in the school system, and it's kind of interesting. I'm going to talk on that in a minute. But the schools are not going to teach them everything they need to know. I feel like somewhere along the lines, and this might have been when I was a kid, this might have been when two parents started going to work, when we started having more single parent families, I'm not sure. But I feel like somewhere along the line, it kind of got in people's heads that schools are supposed to teach our kids everything. And so here's an interesting thing. When I saw that Jordan had all these crazy classes, right? AP Stats, math, economics, math and business, physics, math and science, and then personal finance. Like I was sitting there and I was thinking, this is amazing that she's getting personal finance. Why is this an elective? Why isn't this a required class? And really a required class at a much younger age. Now, Jordan has a benefit because I have been teaching her, or she has kind of been learning to some extent personal finance. I wish I could have taught her more, honestly, but I'm still learning some of it. So personal finance. So here's the interesting thing. Her birthday is like 3 weeks after Christmas. And so her whole life, most of the family gives her money for her birthday. And I've always given her, we've always put that money aside for her to save. And as a young girl, she was really good at saving, really good. And sometimes she would be like, Mommy, I want this. I'm talking, she was little. And I'd say, well, I'm not going to spend my money on it, honey, but you know who has the money? And this was very insightful for me. She was like, no, I don't want it that bad. And I was like, well, I sure am glad I didn't spend my own money on it since you don't want it that bad. At some point, I think the first thing was the dang Xbox, and I want to cuss about that. But the dang Xbox, at some point I was like, well, I'm not going to spend money on that, but you know who has money? And I was expecting the same response, like, I don't want it that bad. No, she went and bought it, and I was like, my soul was crushed. I was like, oh no. And then it was the damn hoverboard. That thing lasted for less than a year before it wouldn't hold a charge anymore. Then it became the shoes. Her dad is a big sneakerhead, so then it became the shoes. And it was one of those things where I was like, oh my God. So, you know, but she's learned some of that, because then, I think it was 2 summers ago, her friends kept going to the movies like every weekend, it seemed like. And she was like, I want to go to the movies. And I'm like, you have to pay for it yourself. And at some point she ran out of money. She was like, I don't have money to go. And I was like, well, guess you shouldn't have bought all those things, right? That aren't really serving you, that you don't even use anymore, that kind of thing. She actually did start selling some stuff on, like, it's called Mercari, but this website called Mercari. Hi, Natasha. Hi, TT. Hi, Tony. Hi, Darius. And so she started selling some stuff. So she got, and she did that on her own. She didn't even come talk to me first. She was just like, hey, I sold my shoes. We need to ship them out. I was like, what? So she started doing that. She got a job at 16 years old. And as you guys heard a few weeks ago, if you were on, she bought her own car. So she has learned some amount of personal finance. But, you know, I'm so glad she's taking the class in school. But as parents, we have a responsibility to teach our kids some of these things as well, because we can't rely on the schools. The schools are already overloaded. Think about teaching your kids things. There are so many ways to teach kids things. And nowadays it's like, if they're in school, a lot of times they're reading a book, and it's really not a book, it's something online, right? They don't even have textbooks anymore. But think about what would make a bigger impression in a kid's mind. Reading about apartheid and Nelson Mandela, or going to South Africa and visiting the 2 prisons that Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in. Think about what would have the bigger impression in your child's mind, or in your young adult's mind, as to, I know we're doing this in November, as to learning and reading about, and in our household we've done a lot of this, learning and reading about slavery and the Civil Rights Act and those types of things, or going to and visiting somewhere where that happened. So we're going to a plantation tour in November. Not mixed feelings on that, but it's going to be a really important learning experience for both of us, right? So understand that, you know, it's not on the schools to teach our kids these things. Yes, they are like a point of contact for educating our children, but we're the bigger teachers for them. Teach them the attitude to love learning. That is so important. Guess what? If your kids watch you come home from work, plop down on the couch and start scrolling through your phone or turning on Netflix or whatever, that's what they see you doing on the weekend, they're not going to develop a love for learning. See, our kids a lot of times learn by what we model to them. So if they see us, now a lot of times we see parents who are also in school, and so they're watching their parents study. That's amazing. Not all of us are going back to school or doing that. So, you know, but if we're self-taught, if we're constantly reading and looking to learn new things, and I'm not saying, hey, you can learn a lot on YouTube, right? So watching YouTube videos, but not about cats. Sorry, Shirley, I know the cats are your thing. But watching YouTube videos about personal finance, watching YouTube videos about stocks and index funds, those kinds of things. If our kids see us doing that, they're going to have it. They're going to pick up the same love for learning. And that's important, because we want our kids to continue learning throughout their lives. It's something, when I was a kid, I was the weird kid in the family. So I was the kid that asked for seconds of vegetables. I was the kid that didn't want to go outside and play, especially in the snow. I was good in the sun, but not in the snow. I was like, can I come in and do chores? and I could regularly be found reading. And my parents were very strict. We had a rule. There was only 1 hour of TV on the weekends per day and ½ hour of TV on weeknights. So we had to choose very wisely. One of our favorite shows was Cosby Show. I know there's, but hey, loved that growing up. But there were lessons in that. Think about it. Even, those good TV shows where there's a lesson in it. Fresh Prince, he had some good lessons in there too. And so if we're having those conversations, you can watch the show and watch it and enjoy it. But then have the conversation afterwards, and don't sit and spend all of your time watching TV. So my daughter, she really likes this show, All American. And towards I don't know when we were watching that, if that was at the beginning of COVID or what, I have no clue. Like, I have no sense of time anymore, right? But I watched the season with her so I could understand what she was watching. And there were teenagers with drug addictions, and there were family issues. And guess what? We didn't just watch it. We talked about it. It's funny because when that study came out that said how much time the average American family spends in meaningful conversation, I came home when I heard that, and it was through a training, and I was like, what? So I told Jordan, I asked her, I said, how much time do you think we spend in meaningful conversation every week? And, she did like a little eye roll thing, and she was like, I don't even know, it's a ton. And I was like, yeah. So when I told her the statistics, she was like, we do more than that. Hi, Nalia. Hi, Theo. So she's like, we do way more than that in one day. And I was like, exactly, because I take this role very seriously. My goal, and I didn't understand it because when I was growing up, my parents said this my whole life. When you turn 18, you move out. And I was like, God, my parents really hate us. Like, they just want us to get out. You know what? I get it. When these kids become teenagers, go ahead. Go. Let's get you ready to get out, right? And so my goal is to get her ready to be out there on her own. And so hopefully she's not struggling when she's out there on her own. And so she continues to want to learn and explore and all of those kinds of things. So understand that we can model our behavior to our kids. We can, like I said, we can take them to learn things, like take them to Washington, D.C. to see some of those monuments and such, instead of just reading about it in a book. That's way more powerful. When you're standing on the ground of a plantation, that's way different than just reading about it, and not necessarily for some people having a connection to that, right? And let those kids really seep in those experiences. So we have all these opportunities to teach our kids. I know with Jordan growing up, I was shocked because the school does, I think maybe in her life, she's been on 2 field trips or maybe 3 max. And I remember when I was a kid, it was like, you got field trips quite a bit. And so as the parent, it's my role and responsibility to now take her on those field trips. And not just for fun, but, to learn things. So go to the zoo, and instead of just looking at the animals, read what it says about the animals, right? When you go to the museum, actually find the areas of the museum. Look, I'm not one of those people. I don't like all museums. Not everything entices me about museums. But if I find something, a part of it that I really like, so I don't know if they still have it up there, but the Denver Museum had a part on like bodies, the human body and stuff like that. It was very fascinating. Jordan wanting to go into medical makes sense. So it's like, learn about these things, right? And so try to be your kid's favorite teacher. Think about your favorite teacher when you were a kid. I was actually talking to one of my friends that I've known since 3rd grade about my favorite teacher, because it was my 3rd grade teacher, and this is the first year I went to this school. And so, Vinny, I don't know if you're watching, but Mrs. Quintana was my very favorite teacher. And actually, she's the one that busted me out to my parents, though. Maybe I shouldn't like her, because she's the one that told my parents I needed glasses, and I wasn't too happy about that. I mean, at some point it would have been obvious, because I'm blind as a bat without my contacts. But, think about your favorite teacher. Our goal should be to be our kids' favorite teacher. Just like, when our kids are looking up at these people that they call their heroes and their athletes and that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Kobe, for example, had a lot of qualities that I would be perfectly okay with my kid adopting and, trying to emulate and those types of things. I 100% agree with that. At this point, I'm not too sure about the politicians. being our kids' heroes, but that's a different subject. But our goal should be to be our kids' favorite teacher. And the way that we do that is to really connect with them, to really spend that time in the conversation. Don't just let them read a book at school and not ask them about it. One of the coolest things that happened a few years ago. So there are some subjects that I am very passionate about. And Jordan has not always appreciated that, because to her sometimes, hi, Coach Clark, sometimes it's a little bit embarrassing to her. And so she, at this one particular year in school, I don't know why, because it was for her language arts class. I don't know what they call this anymore, but their language arts class. And for some reason, for a whole semester, all of the books that they got to choose to read were about culture and ethnicity and these kinds of things. And I think this was the first time she really delved into things outside of what I would have her do at home. And really started to really get excited about this. And so she read a book. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest it. It's by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and it's called Between the World and Me. And one of the coolest things is not only did she read that book, but when she was done reading that book, she told me I needed to read it. And then I read the book, and then we could have some conversation about it. When we went to watch the movie, The Hate U Give, and then I bought the book later. I'm one of those people, I like to do it backwards. I watch the movie first, and then I read the book, because then of course, the book is always better. But I always feel like if I read the book first and watch the movie, I'm always going to be disappointed in the movie. And at least if I watch the movie first, I'm going to get the appreciation for it first. But with that, there's conversation constantly going on in our house about what's being learned and stuff. So I think it was her freshman year, she took a class for sports marketing, which I thought was super cool. So, I would sit there and talk to her about it, and I would watch her do her simulations, is what they were called, on the computer about it. And they were kind of cool. It was like, okay, so there's an arena with this many seats, and you have to bring in this much money. How much are you charging per seat? There was some math to it. There was marketing to it, all sorts of stuff. But I was like, man, this is cool. So not only am I trying to teach her, but I'm letting her teach me, because you know what they say? The best way to learn is to learn to be a teacher, right? So if you're reading something, don't just read it to read it. Read it as if you have to teach it, and you're going to learn better. And so having her teach me is a wonderful reverse thing, and having those conversations outside of that. So the last thing I kind of want to just touch on, wow, Larry, your favorite teacher is still down here. Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to ask you later offline who that person is and see if I know them. So the last thing I kind of want to leave with you is to think about this. So I have mixed feelings, like I told you, about this whole online learning thing, because I want my kid to be able to experience senior year. I also for the little kids, like the elementary school kids, and I know they're doing it differently, but I think I was actually chatting through LinkedIn with a teacher that's in Puerto Rico, and she's a kindergarten teacher, and they're completely online. And I was like, can you imagine trying to teach kindergartners online? Can you imagine for the parents and for the kindergartner themselves? There's not going to be much learning done that way. But so I was thinking about it, and towards the end of last year, when COVID first hit and all the schools closed down and everything, and I think most of the schools were pretty much the same on this. And so it was kind of like this foofy thing to be school online, because pretty much all of the schools said, you know what? We're not even going to, your grades can't go down from this point. They can only go up. And so here's the thing. There was not structure to that online learning. And I know for some parents that was very frustrating. It was kind of interesting for me because, again, it was a little bit of a lesson, because here's Jordan. She has all A's and 1 B, which was in her AP language arts class. And, I kept noticing, it didn't seem like she was logging on to school too much. So I asked her at one point, I said, so, are you working to bring your grade up in AP? And not for me, but if you guys understood, this kid, when she got her first B, she cried. She thought she was so stupid because she got a B. And I was like, holy cow, kid, what's wrong with you? So I was like, all right. And so I said, are you working to bring that grade up? And she goes, nah, he wants us to do too much. Now, the funny thing is her language arts teacher lives 2 doors down from us. So I've had several conversations with them during this time out on the sidewalk. But, you know, I was like, okay. And I let that be her choice. I didn't jump on her about that. So here's the thing. The way schools are set up, there's a certain structure. And as you get into like the middle school and high school where you're changing classes and stuff like that, it's like you go to this class from this time to this time, this class from this time to this time. You can use a bathroom in passing periods. Here's when you go to lunch. Here's when you go home for the day. It's very structured. And here's what that teaches our kids to be. It teaches them to be employees, right? And I'm not saying I'm an employee, right? But it doesn't teach them to think for themselves. It doesn't teach them to really go after their passion. As entrepreneurs, so entrepreneurs usually are doing something, they find something that they're so passionate about that they can't imagine doing anything else. And that's what they do with their lives. And it's a struggle at times, and sometimes it's a, you know, at some point, hopefully it becomes a success. But you know what? They have to learn all these things. So they have to figure out how to be disciplined throughout the day and time management. And they have to learn all this themselves. And so I was actually kind of impressed with the way it was going towards the end of the last school year, because I was like, this is amazing. She's going to have to learn things like what's really that important to her. You know, they say where you spend your time, it says a lot about what's important to you. So she determined that getting that A in language arts wasn't that important to her, because guess what? It was an AP class, so it gets weighted anyway. So there you go. She had over a 4.0. She's good. She's like, I don't care that much, right? I'm not going to spend my time on that. I don't like doing it. Now, look at her choices this year. She could take more fluffy classes, but she's taking 4 classes that have to do with math and science in some way, shape, or form. She loves math and science, right? She has a little bit more control over that. But a lot of times our kids don't have these opportunities. And so I was really impressed last year when at the end of last school year, because I really did think kids were going to be learning a lot about time management and a lot about self-discipline and those types of things. And now they're taking that back away. So as parents, it is still our responsibility to teach our kids these types of things. I had one of Jordan's language arts teachers in middle school. I'm so blessed for her, and I cannot remember her last name. It was an Italian last name. Loved that woman. She changed my life, honestly. And so I remember reaching out to her at one point, and I was like, hey, so Jordan got a B on this paper. She's pretty upset. Writing isn't her big thing. Like, she doesn't understand putting in all of the description and stuff, because to her, she's math, A, B, C, right? It's that easy. I don't want to put in fluffy. And so her math teacher came back to me and she was like, hey, are you open to receiving feedback? And I was like, yeah, totally. And so she actually told me, she was like, you got to stop this. And she said, Jordan is perfectly capable of doing this on her own. She said, Jordan is one of the smartest kiddos that I have in my class. And she was like, I promise you, she's got this. Once you step away, she will step in. And up until that point, I am not kidding you guys. I was a helicopter parent. I was, every day when I'd get home, I was like, okay, what homework do you have? And we would sit there together at the table, and she would work on her homework. And if she needed help, I was right there. And I would check her grades almost every day online, look at her grades on assignments and stuff. They were always good. Why was I doing that? When her teacher told me that, I think her teacher gave me this advice twice, and then it just like stuck. I very rarely look at her grades anymore. I very rarely get on her or ask her about her homework, because she knows, and she's older, so I understand with younger kids you can't do this, but she knows what she's responsible to do. And she gets to make that decision, because guess what? One of the best teachers in life is consequences. And if they choose to not put in the time to do something, hi Les, hi David, if they choose to not put in their time to do their schoolwork, guess what? There's consequences that come with that. Right? And not only from the school, so they might get a bad grade. It might affect their GPA if they're in in upper level classes. It might, for example, they might get in school suspension, or they might have to sit in from recess and do their homework. But guess what? We can also give them consequences at home, right? To help teach them time management and those kinds of things. Hi, Keto. So just understand that consequences is one of the best teachers. So I'm open at this point. If you guys want to type anything in based on anything that I'm saying, based on what I've said tonight, I just hope that all of our kids have an amazing school year, whatever that might look like. I'm hoping that all of our kids have parents, and I know good people, so I feel like most of my friends do this anyways, but have parents that are very involved and spend way more than 15 minutes per week in meaningful conversation with them, and that we spend time teaching them things, not just like the scholarly things, but how to be a good friend, you know, how to be a giving person. Those kinds of things are important too. So hopefully we're all doing that. But that's the end of Woke Wednesday. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. We're now on the downhill side, second half of the week. Have a great weekend. I'm always here if you want to reach out or anything like that. So talk to you guys later. Bye.